We're doing chapter 6, Corners. Maurice Blanchard. Close space. Close the kangaroo's pouch. It's warm in there. With nests and shells, I was quite obviously in the presence of transpositions of the function of inhabiting. My aim was to study chimerical or crude types of intimacy, whether light and airy, like the nest in the tree, or symbolic of a life rigidly encrusted in stone like the mollusk. Now should I like to turn my attention to impressions of intimacy which, however short-lived or imaginary, have nevertheless a more human root and do not need transposition. They lend themselves to direct psychology, even if positive minds take them for so much idle musing. The point of departure of my reflections is the following. Every corner in a house, every angle in a room, every inch of secluded space in which we like to hide or withdraw into ourselves, is a symbol of solitude for the imagination. That is to say, it is the germ of a room or of a house. The documents available in literary works are few, for the reason that this purely physical contraction into oneself already bears the mark of a certain negativism. Also, in many respects, a corner that is lived in tends to reject and restrain, even to hide life. The corner becomes a negation of the universe. In one's corner, one does not talk to oneself. When we recall the hours we have spent in our corners, we remember above all the silence of our thoughts. This being the case, why describe the geometry of such indigent solitude? Psychologists, and above all metaphysicians, will find these circuits of topo-analysis quite useless. They know how to observe uncommunicative natures directly. They do not need to have a sullen person in a corner described to them as cornered. But it is not easy to efface the factors of place. And every retreat on the part of the soul possesses, in my opinion, figures of havens. That most sordid of all havens, the corner, deserves to be examined. To withdraw into one's corner is undoubtedly a meager expression, but despite its meagerness it has numerous images. Some, perhaps, of great antiquity, images that are psychologically primitive. At times, the simpler the image, the vaster the dream. To begin with, the corner is a haven that ensures us one of the things we prize most highly, immobility. It is the sure place, the place next to my immobility. The corner is a sort of half-box, part walls, part door. It will serve as an illustration for the dialectics of inside and outside, which I shall discuss in a later chapter. Consciousness of being at peace in one's corner produces a sense of immobility, and this in turn radiates immobility. An imaginary room rises up around our bodies, which think that they are well hidden when we take refuge in a corner. Already, the shadows are walls. A piece of furniture constitutes a barrier. Hangings are a roof. But all of these images are over-imagined. So we have to designate the space of our immobility by making it the space of our being. In L'État de Bosch, Noël Arnaud writes, "I am the space where I am." This is a great line. But nowhere can it be better appreciated than in a corner. In Mein Leben ohne mich, My Life Without Me, Rilke writes, "Suddenly, a room with its lamp appeared to me, was almost palpable in me. I was already a corner in it, but the shutters sensed me and closed." It would be hard to find a more felicitous way of saying that the corner is the chamber of being. Let us now take an ambiguous text in which being becomes manifest at the very moment when it comes forth from its corner. Jean-Paul Sartre, writing on Baudelaire, quotes a sentence from Richard Hughes' A High Wind in Jamaica that deserves lengthy commentary. Emily had been playing houses in a nook right in the bows. It is not this line, however, that Sartre discusses, but the following. And tiring of it, she was walking rather aimlessly aft, when it suddenly flashed into her mind that she was she. Before examining these thoughts from various angles, I shall point out that in all probability, in the novel, they correspond to what we are obligated to call invented childhood, with which novels abound. For novelists often return to an invented childhood which has not been experienced to recount events whose naivete is also invented. This unreal past projected through literary means into a time that precedes the story often conceals the actuality of a daydream which would assume all its phenomenological value if it were presented in really actual naivete. But the verbs to be and to write are hard to reconcile. And yet, as it is, the text quoted by Sartre is a valuable one because it designates topo analytically, that is, in terms of space and experience of outside and inside, the two directions that psychoanalysts refer to as introvert and extrovert. Before life, before the passions, in the very pattern of existence, the novelist encounters this duality. The lightning-like thought that the little girl in the story has found in herself comes to her as she leaves her house. Here we have a cogito of emergence without our having been given the cogito of a being withdrawn into itself. The more or less somber cogito of a being who first plays at making itself a Dutch stove, like Descartes, a sort of chimerical home, in a corner of a boat. The child has just discovered that she is herself in an explosion toward the outside, which is a reaction, perhaps to certain concentrations in a corner of her being. For the recess in the boat is also a corner of being. But when she has explored the vast universe of the boat in the middle of the ocean, does she return to her little house? Now that she knows that she is herself, will she resume her game of playing houses? Will she return home? In other words, withdraw again into herself? One can undoubtedly become aware of existing by escaping from space. Here, however, the figure of being is related to a special concept. Therefore, the novelist should have given us the details of the inversion of a dream that led from home to the universe in quest of being. And since this is invented childhood, fictionalized metaphysics, the author holds the key to both domains. He senses their correlation. No doubt he could have illustrated otherwise this sudden awareness of being. But since the house preceded the universe, we should be told her daydreams in it. As it is, the author has sacrificed, or perhaps suppressed, these corner daydreams, and placed them in the category of child's games, of children's games, by which he more or less admits that the real things of life are the exterior ones. But life in corners, and the universe itself withdrawn into a corner with the daydreamer, is a subject about which poets will have more to tell us. They will not hesitate to give this daydream all its reality.